Hello there. I'm Kane Sims, and I run the VUX World podcast. Anyone heard the VUX World podcast? Yeah, put myself on a spot a little bit here. Do check it out if you are interested in learning all about voice design, strategy, and development. And I will allow the panel to introduce themselves. We have some of the top designers and strategists in the industry, let alone in the country, on the stage right now. So we'll start with Ben on my left. Do you want to tell us who you are, Ben, and maybe an example of some of the things that you've been working on in the voice space?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ben Sauer. I'm a product director at Babylon Health. Last year I was training people in voice for O'Reilly, and I've trained people in voice design all over the world, including NASA. I can die happy now. At Babylon we've been iterating over literally dozens of voice use cases. So we've learned a lot in that time. Haven't launched anything yet, but watch this space.
Cool. Charlie?
Hi, I'm Charlie Cadbury. I'm the CEO of Say It Now. I've been working in voice since 2015, where we proved that you could book an airline ticket using your voice, then built out an in-room assistant with Marriott, so you could order a gin and tonic in your bedroom using your voice before moving that into UK rail. And then we set up Say It Now 18 months ago to bring our kind of relatively mature understanding about how to launch voice products to the masses. And our kind of peak moment was this summer, winning the Alexa Cup. We won the UK round, the European round, and then we came runners-up in Newark. We got beaten by Barbie.
It's a scandal.
It's a scandal. That deserves a round of applause, doesn't it? Surely. Jen?
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Heape. I'm the CCO and co-founder of Vixen Labs. Vixen Labs is my mic just suddenly got louder. Hello everyone. Is a voice consultancy and product design studio based here in London. We work with major brands all around the world to help define the strategy for voice and what is going to be applicable for them. And then when it is pertinent, also we build voice entities for them. Entities in the broadest sense.
Fantastic. Quirine?
Well, I think you guys already know me.
You've just been here. Move on, Rozzi.
Hi everyone, I'm Rozzi Meredith, so I head up the strategy offering at Voxly Digital. We are a voice development agency as well. We're based in London, have been for the last couple of years, and we build voice experiences primarily on Google Assistant and Alexa for major kind of household brands. So we've done, in the last couple of years, of over 40 big skills for brands such as Unilever and Diageo. We do a lot of entertainment skills as well for kind of major film production companies. And I'm also co-founder of Sample, which was the world's first voice activated sampling platform, which is this really annoying buzzword way of saying we built a voice platform basically that allows brands to activate their existing creative with a call to action of ask Alexa, send me a sample of Diet Coke, and then it magically appears at your door.
Fantastic. So we'll maybe get into some of the detail around sort of designing for voice. But first, I want to go back over to this side with you, Ben. One of the things that when we first met you said that has stuck with me ever since, and I think it's pertinent to set in the scene for this discussion, is you mentioned that things break down into two parts. One is designing the right thing, and the next is designing the thing right. So when it comes to voice, why is it so important to first of all design the right thing? And what do you mean by that?
It's a big old question. So, Katarina Fake, co-founder of Flickr, to say this another way, she said, it's probably more important to work on the right thing than it is to work hard. I'm paraphrasing badly, right? So, I think there's a truth in that, right? Which is that you have to think very hard if you're going to make success of voice, that your use case is right. But what I would say is that we're in a period where I'm not sure that we should be placing that high an expectation on the things that we produce in our organisation, because we're in a learning phase both for the consumers and organisations. That's probably what we need to be doing. Is mostly what we've been doing at Babylon is exploring which use cases work, because we're asking people to engage in behaviours that are very new and to shift their behaviours away from things that they are traditionally very attached to, like how do I book a GP, for example, right? That's something that you think you have a mental model of, and now we're shifting that. That's a highly sensitive situation. So design the right thing, think hard about which use cases are actually going to work, but forgive yourself if they don't, because no one's getting it really right yet. And then design the thing right. Get deeply into the practice of how to design for voice, because there is a rich history there. It's very niche. There's only a small group of designers, mostly people who worked at Nuance, for example, who now all run Google Assistant and Alexa. But there is a rich history there to tap into. You just have to look hard to find it and figure out what the practices are. I think the main problem we have today is that there's no metaphor for how to design for voice, right? So when we design on screen, we don't need a metaphor. We're just like moving the boxes around and we're designing something that people can see. But when we go to design flows, or what Amazon are up to at the moment, it's changing the way that we design, because we're applying a tree metaphor, for example, or a flow metaphor. But those aren't actually conversations. That saying, all models are broken, but some are useful. And that's the phase we're in with voice at the moment. Sorry, I was long-winded.
No. Is there, Jen, is there any other way to design other than that tree-based way of going about things? A or B down the tree, so to speak?
Yes. I mean, the short version is yes. There most definitely is. I think the pain points that we have is there is no standardized way of navigating, to touch on your point, there's no standardized way of navigating through a voice experience. So the reality of quite often needing to come into the beginning of a skill, as in you just open it up, you come to like the landing page of the website, is you most often do need to set out the stall of what is involved in there. And the majority of the time, the clearest way of doing that is to offer a menu that gives a top level that then feeds down into a decision tree. Going into something that is sort of getting too funky and breaking too many of the rules when we don't even have rules is a danger, but I would say it is really dependent on the use case. So, for example, if your use case is that you're creating a skill, but within it there are very specific and almost siloed tasks that skill is going to do that can be accessed through an explicit invocation, a direct invocation, basically like a deep link, and you can go in and do that, and you can do that safely. Safely is you can have issues by the synonyms that you use to pick that up. I'll give an example because I realize I'm being quite vague. Then you can have a way of being able to jump into functionality deep within a skill rather than having a waterfall structure. But you do need to create something that has a fundamental backbone and something that is relatively normative to what we're experiencing at the moment. And that is for a skill that would exist on, say, the skills store. Other voice experiences in car, on mobile, as in through like a voice augmentation of a mobile app or something like that, may well be different.
The send me a sample one's an interesting one because it doesn't necessarily have a huge conversational tree. Is most of the design in that about getting short bursts of it right? And what's the difference between something like that that's intended to be like a dip in and out versus something that's a bit more
absolutely. It's a real kind of like call and response activation channel. So, we've done a kind of range at Voxly. We've done a lot of those sort of entertainment, much more sort of richer audio experience type skills. And we're looking at more kind of situational design, so kind of like module-based, free. We've done quite a lot with charities, which are sort of free text-based, free search. But with Send Me a Sample, it was very much about making that journey and that user journey as seamless as possible and as friction-free. It literally is see the advert, ask your assistant, turns up at your door, because, and the benefits to brands was about, data opt-in, it was about more targeted, so being able, if your media strategy was targeted correctly, you're a world away from just, a brand saying, you need to hand out these products at Waterloo Station to people with beards, and then actually they all go to like 13-year-old girls because the brand ambassadors just want to get them out. You know, that kind of ROI is much more stretched, and that value is hard to prove. Whereas when it's much more data targeted, you know, response channel for voice, that analytics is really rich, and you can guarantee that targeting is much better. But absolutely, from a voice design perspective, we didn't want to complicate it too much. And you know, we're looking at it and we're iterating, and there are kind of areas where you might be able to optimize and put sort of richer brand content, maybe some information in, all that sort of stuff. But right now, it's kind of phase one, proving the use case, and it's definitely proven that it's worked. So yeah.
May I add something onto that? Because I'm just thinking, I realize that we're really talking about the top layer of design, but I really see the power in the language models that are behind all these conversations. And I see a future where you might not need a designer, that you can really rely on these strong language models that pick up these utterances and relate them directly to the answer you're looking for. And well, that's what's going on in our current world. There are many research groups from different companies, not only mine, that are working on understanding natural language. And once we get that right, let's say, then we can actually leverage it to the fullest, this conversational piece we're talking about. Just to add on to what you're saying, we're really not there yet. We're designing across where our language models aren't at the right state yet. Yeah.
And I think that's just so bang on, and I think that's why very often when, you know, like my hesitation of like, well, yeah, you could essentially, there are a million different ways that you could design, and what to what is working well now and what would be a stable product and what I would like to design are not the same things. And even what I think might give the best result from a user-centric design and UX best practices, those two things are not necessarily the same. And a huge amount of it is exactly because of that. It's because of the language modeling. It's because of the capabilities to pick up on the synonyms that you're going to be creating around those search queries within content and things like that. And it's because that is not stable, as I call it, and because, you know, it's going to fall flat on its face and you're going to just be in a horrible feedback loop of error handling, that you do have to over-engineer the design, which is a real shame.
And that's what we're doing. We're over-engineering actually what our language models can process at this time.
Exactly.
Charlie, you started out in the voice sort of space working with the sort of like travel sector, and you've done some stuff in retail and stuff like that. So you've kind of been with this technology for quite a while. Is that the core challenge at the moment, either from a design perspective or from a finding success perspective? Is it a technology challenge, or is there something else going on?
So we set everything up from an insights perspective. So to echo your point, we're very much in a learning phase. So you need to be able to set yourself up with the expectation that what you're going to do is going to build the solid foundation for what you do next. And if you set yourself up with that kind of goal, and then the users with a kind of a narrow domain that they can then talk to, then you'll understand about what people are going to then use your service for, and then you build specifically for those use cases first and make them more robust.
What are some of the language model aside, or maybe we can delve deeper into that, but what are some of the kind of key learnings that maybe we'll kind of go around one at a time, the key learnings from a design perspective that you've learned over the past 2 to 3 years?
Well, I suppose it's sort of moving away from SMAS and looking more at those sort of rich, maybe sort of content-based skills. One of the things we found at Voxly, and that I think everyone in the industry is finding at the moment, is that major difference between using Alexa's voice and using human-based, actual human interaction, human voices, building experiences, which is, they are limited at the moment with the technology, but doing as much as we can within what we have to make those experiences kind of really rich, really personal. Because, we're all sort of taking these assistants into our homes, giving them this really important role in our lives. I mean, like Google deals with all my lights in my home, and the internet's down, I have to sit in the dark. It's, you just think that was a couple of years ago, you'd never do that. So designing to reward that attention and that intimacy that users are giving us as voice designers and brands who have voices is really important. I mean, there was a VoiceBot article just yesterday, I think, which was saying 71% of people who use voice skills prefer a human voice, which isn't really a kind of big, amazing stat, but it's useful to have the data behind it, I think, in terms of that. So, designing really, really kind of audio-rich, audio-immersive skills, particularly in the kids space, really works for us.
Well, Quirine, what's the kind of key insight that you've learned over the years?
Yeah, I think for me, what we also discuss internally a lot is that we see conversation as this new UI layer, let's say it. And it's so crucial for companies and brands to own that layer as well and understand what conversations are happening around their brand. So picking up what users are asking and what answers you actually as a brand can't fulfill, but what wacky other things are people asking about your brand or asking it to do. And once you get that insight and you can learn from that, you can just take your brand and your product to a next level. And I really see that as the basis of what we're doing here. Yeah.
From what you're doing, Ben, you're kind of in the realms of changing people's habits and getting people to interact not only with a new technology, but to do something that is really important to them and really emotive to them. So is there any insights that you've learned from the experiment and that you've been doing that may apply maybe to other people working in healthcare or may apply more generally?
I think there's a couple of things. The thing that's really struck me working in health is what I call the paradox of voice. So because it's tapping into like circuits of the brain that are hundreds of thousands of years old as opposed to, let's say, 30, right? We've been interacting with each other with voice for hundreds of thousands of years, potentially in computers for 30 to 50. So that's why broken voice experiences are so disappointing to people, because you have hundreds of thousands of years of evolution building up your expectation. How is this thing going to operate for me? And when it doesn't work, it's incredibly disappointing. More disappointing than a screen-based interaction. On the other hand, what I'm trying to say is it's very easy to lose trust in voice, extremely easy. On the other hand, because it's tapping into ancient parts of the brain, it's also the place which has the highest potential for trust. Right, so if you can make that a trustworthy experience and it feels like a person that you're interacting with, that's absolutely gold. And we're not really there yet. These things aren't reliable enough for us to fulfill on that trust. What I would say about sort of tactical research at Babylon is that about 1 in 5 of the folks that we test with show an unusual degree of trust in their voice assistants. So they'll say things like, I have the Google Assistant next to my laptop all day and I ask it spelling questions. Or, I know Alexa's not real, but she's my friend at home. And so over time, we start to see these behaviors shift and higher degrees of trust if we can overcome some of the reliability and the difficulty of the AI problems. We're not able to have proper AI-driven conversations yet without scripting them. But once we hit those barriers and we're able to overcome them, then we're going to see some very fundamental shifts in expectation. So just to come back to what I was saying, slightly long-winded, highest potential for trust, easiest place to lose it.
What do you think is in store then over the next 12 to 18 months?
So, for me, the biggest challenge is all around discoverability and retention. So, there was a great quote from the BBC head of voice design. She said that we're in the crap wizard phase of voice assistants. That we know that they have all the answers. We just don't know the spells or how to ask the questions. And so, for us, the big learning is like when we were doing stuff with Marriott, then we had to put a label next to the device to say these are the kind of questions you ask, and this is how you get into the skill. When we're doing working with Talisker, we're putting stickers on whiskey bottles saying, Alexa, open Talisker tasting. This is how you get into it. And so trying to break that barrier down is what the platforms are doing. They can bring out name-free skill invocations, so you don't have to remember how to get into certain elements of functionality. You just ask the way that you would ask any other human being how you'd get these tasks done or get access to that information. So if the promise of this name-free skill invocation comes to light in the way that we think it's going to, then the challenge is working out how you can build skills in the right way so that your skill is in front of the right person at the right time, and you're then in control of that experience. And that's very much where a lot of our focus is right now.
Just building on that, sorry, Kane, I think that's such an important point. Discovery comes up all the time, doesn't it, in terms of, there's literally 100,000 skills on the App Store, and so many of them just get built, before people use them, and they just go to the graveyard of skills, which as product development people makes us sad. But I think that point around, the behaviour is changing. That there's a really important role there, though, for don't just build the skill and then hope that people come to it. If you've got very kind of like standard phrases, or in the way that Diageo's doing, owning things like the bar, which don't feel branded, then that's a great use case. But normally, brands are looking at building something, and they're encouraging users to kind of say, open this, open my brand name, open something specific, which is fine. I think the behaviour is changing, but trying to, we're seeing at the moment that a lot of the sort of voice budgets have moved from innovation teams to brand teams. I think that's where there's going to be a really interesting space, is brands beginning to see voice not as this sort of siloed channel, but as a really important part of the marketing mix and the content mix and the customer experience mix, and trying to make sure, okay, well, we have a chatbot on this channel, we have voice here, we have all this brilliant content. Ben made the really good point in his workshop this morning around designing content voice first from the start, even if you haven't even got a voice experience. And I think that sort of mindset is shifting, and that will massively change, I think, how well brands particularly invest in it and leverage it for their challenges.
That's really a huge part as well, and that's something that, so yes, we do a huge amount, like the strategic upfront and the consultancy side, we do the build, but also one of our specialisms is actually the marketing element that comes afterwards. That speaks to both our individual heritages as co-founders, as working in advertising, mutually for over a decade, but is that it needs to be seen within that sense. It needs to be seen holistically. It needs to be considered, having the invocation on an email, on a point of sale, on, direct mail. I won't even go, maybe flyers are going to come back. Who knows?
We're testing programmatic audio as well, actually, because you can
exactly.
very specifically target groups.
Yeah, the huge amount exactly. And looking at ways in which you can not only tap into the right audience at the right time, but also taking all the learnings that we've had from social and from wider marketing to use that for your skill. If you build it, that people probably won't come. And I think those budgets are just starting to be unlocked, where brands are starting to understand that, which I think caused a lot of disillusionment in the early days.
We are very, 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 very close to the end. Very, very quickly, one at a time, one key takeaway for people to take away with them that will help them design better voice experiences. We'll start with you, Ben.
Well, I'll just repeat actually something you mentioned already. So the way we're thinking about voice at Babylon is designing voice first, just to build on what that actually means. What we're finding is that if you looked at your FAQs today and you read that content out loud, you'd find it probably wasn't suitable. So what if you started authoring your content, even if it's not for voice today, as though you're thinking about voice? It has to have that brevity, that shortness, the snappiness that you want from a voice experience. Because that content scales. The content that you have at the moment designed for a screen doesn't. So I'm training doctors and content people to actually sit at home and read stuff out loud to make sure it sounds right in voice. Again, even if it's not necessarily targeted voice right away. So work with your content strategists, work with your folks internally to figure out how you can start seeing scalability in your content in future.
Cool. And for us, we're all massively trying to push voice forward. So for us, it's looking to see where it makes most sense to use voice to delegate a task, and where that task, if delegated via voice, is going to save the user the most amount of time. And that's where we're spending all of our time, because if we get those bits right, then A, we'll push people over to voice, and B, there's a huge amount of value that we can capture.
Jen?
From a UX-specific point of view, just speaking to the room, we've been spending a lot of time this year creating a very, very robust testing scenario, basically, the testing loop that we have that we use for internal signal testing, and then how that can come out as beta releases and so on and so forth, so we can actually get first-party data ahead of actually having an MVP release. So actually really working into that methodology has been something incredibly important that hasn't really been, I'd say, done as much as it should have within VUX. Within UX, yes, there's a lot of learnings. My general point on voice would be that smart speakers are red herring. Voice is everywhere. 2020 is going to be the battle of the earpods, so location is never going to be more important.
And very quickly, Quirine.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I think what I would really want you all to realize and really remember that there's also really an ethical part about this. You're really in people's worlds, and conversations are sometimes very personal. And what we do with the data behind these conversations, that needs to be handled in a right way. And also the answers you as a voice agent give back. I wouldn't want you to over-include only marketing people wanting to put all their ideas in that content, because you as a designer have the power to bring that to light and really, get that discussion going on, is this really what we want to answer with or deal with? Yeah.
And very finally, in the words of Jerry Springer, one final thought for Rozzi, one key takeaway.
I'm completely on board with Jen. I think the analytics and the optimization is absolutely key. We are in V1, so not just kind of pushing something out and seeing how it's going, but kind of taking a really iterative approach and getting brands particularly to think really long term about this. So build a skill, but iterate, make it evergreen, try and just learn as we go. And I think, that's going to be the way that we create the best experiences.
So important.
Fantastic. Sounds like a chant. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for our panel. And one final thought from me is to listen to the VUX World podcast, if you like.